One time, my restaurant was haunted. Now this is a little bit of a stretch because it actually wasn't just one time, it was multiple. So here are those stories. The first ghost story takes place at a cantina I used to work at a couple of years ago. Now this restaurant was a part of a larger old playhouse building. So basically there was an old playhouse inside, and then one of the like extended wings was this restaurant. And when I first started working there, I was told of the lady in the yellow dress. Now nobody knew who this lady was. There was a plaque on the side of the playhouse with this woman's name that some people that I work with theorize might be the identity of this ghost, but basically there was a woman in a yellow dress that people that worked at this restaurant would commonly see when they were closing late at night. Now sometimes they would see her out of the corner of their eye, they would see flashes of yellow walk past, or they would just see her. One of the managers I work with had a personal story where he was closing late at night and he was in the office, and the way it worked was like there was the restaurant, the kitchen was this way, then there was this big long hallway, manager's office at the end of the hallway, and then you took a right to get to the bathroom. So he's closing this one night and he sees a person walk down the hallway out of the corner of his eye and turn to go to the bathrooms. Obviously he thinks nothing of it. He thinks like maybe it's a customer that like asked one of the staff to like come in and like use the restroom really quickly or whatever. So he's like, okay, doesn't even think about it. Until he realizes that it's been about 5-10 minutes and nobody's come out of the bathroom. And there was only one way to get out, which was back the way they came. So he's like, okay, that's a little weird. So he gets up and he goes over to check the bathrooms. And the bathroom lights in both bathrooms are off. Now this is important because the bathroom lights were automated. So the fact that they were off meant that nobody had come anywhere near that bathroom in a long period of time. So he doesn't know who this mysterious figure was that like went down the hallway, turned, and never came back out. Now there's a second story that happened at this restaurant, and this is a particular piece of lore that people who work there were specifically warned about. Since this was part of a very old playhouse, there were a lot of decorations or pieces that were a part of the playhouse that all the workers were told to never touch. And they were told specifically, do not take any of these items and try to take them home. And I guess there was a worker there that really liked this one object that was sitting there and decided that he was going to steal it. And he ended up taking it home with him and immediately bringing it back. Because apparently the night that he stole this object, he went home and crazy things were happening in his apartment. He was being completely haunted for the next 12 hours, crazy things happening that he has never experienced before. So the next shift, he literally came back with the object, put it down, and he was like, it's real, I believe it, I'm not touching it anymore. Now we move into the second place that I worked that had some really weird things happen. So anytime I go and I work somewhere new, I always ask people like, what are the ghost stories? Do you have any ghost stories, etc.? And one of my managers that I was working with was talking about the kitchen ghost, and he had video proof where basically he was closing late one night, all the bartenders, all the kitchen staff, all the cocktail waitresses had left. He was doing money in the office, and the office door was right next to the kitchen door. And all of a sudden he hears this crash come from the kitchen. So of course he freaks out, he opens the door, and he sees a giant pile of plates just shattered all over the floor. This is like some big tough guy. Like he doesn't think ghost, he thinks intruder, right? So he ends up like going around checking every single spot he possibly could in this bar to see if he could find who came in and spilled those plates. And he says he could find nobody anywhere. The place was completely abandoned. So he was like, oh, well, you know, I don't want someone to be hiding in here, so I'll just check the security cameras and I'll see where they went. And this is the part that gets crazy. He goes and he checks the security cameras, and he sees that there was this like small stack of plates that were sitting on one of the shelves in the kitchen. Now it had been sitting there for hours because people had been gone and nobody was around it. And this stack of plates physically just shoots off of the shelf and shatters everywhere. It wasn't like a little like tilt, like somehow maybe there was like an uneven shelf that kept it fine for hours and then all of a sudden decided to spill. No, you see the plates like shoot out to where, you know, they made it to the other side of the kitchen. So he tells me this story. He always shows people this security footage. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so crazy. That's so creepy. And a couple months later, I'm sitting in the same room with a different manager doing my bar checkout. And all of a sudden, we hear crash coming from the kitchen. This manager freaks out, gets up, opens the door, and sees that there is a stack of plates that have shattered across the kitchen floor, and nobody is in the kitchen. Now, the entire staff was closing, so there were still a bunch of people in the building, but there wasn't even a soul in the kitchen when this stack of plates once again shattered. And then the last story happened at this particular place as well, and that was the bathroom ghost. Now, the bathroom ghost was a story that people had told, that apparently there was a ghost people had seen in the bathroom, weird things happening, etc. Nothing really happened while I was there until this one night. We were all closing, and there was a group of about 3 girls that all went to go use the restroom before leaving. I'm like counting my money on the bar, and all of a sudden they all come screaming out of the bathroom. Obviously, all of the patrons were gone and it was just the staff, and they had all gone into the bathroom. And the way that these bathroom stalls were set up is they were basically like doors with blinds that shot down, so like you could see movement outside the door. And all the girls chose like the first 3 stalls across from each other to go to the bathroom. And every single one of them saw a shadow of a person walk past their door and go into one of the stalls at the end of the row. And they all thought nothing of it until they opened the door and noticed that they were alone in the bathroom. There was nobody else in the bathroom with them in any of the stalls. So whatever shadow figure they saw was not a person. And honestly, all of them freaking out was such a wild experience, because like every single one of them like clocked the fact that they saw this shadow, and they all separately saw the shadow in all separate stalls at the exact same time, but nobody was there. Moral of the story, the service industry can be spooky.